Now we're ready to really engage Homo Amor. Who is Homo Amor? Homo Amor landed yesterday. We evoked this response to Harari's Homo Deus, this response to a desiccated view of reality, which is a flatland, disqualified universe driven by data in which the only thing that exists to stand against it is these outmoded versions of humanism in which everything is, in the bad sense of the word, merely subjective. There's nothing that's ultimate. There's no quality. There's no sense of ultimacy. There's no ontology, if you will, right? For Harari, and bless him and love him, and I look forward to having coffee, maybe with a little rum, but for Harari, he sets up this classical, very outmoded contradiction between the pre-modern period, which he identifies solely with its shadow. The pre-modern period is dogma and disaster. Now, of course, he's partially right. The pre-modern period was dogma and disaster, and Voltaire, when he invoked modernity, correctly said, remember the cruelties. So I share Harari's critique of pre-modernity. But of course, where he's dead wrong is the assumption that pre-modernity's ideas were all just what he calls fictions, just made up, just imagined fictions. Well, that's actually not correct. Actually, underneath the surface structures of the different traditions, which were often ethnocentric and homophobic and corrupt and anti-feminine, anti-body, and suffered from all sorts of contradictions and tragedies, underneath that, the great traditions also had depth structures, what Leibniz called the philosophia perennius, the perennial philosophy, what Fritjof Schuon talked about and Aldous Huxley made popular in his book, The Perennial Philosophy. And the depth structures of the perennial philosophy, shared by all the great traditions, are stunning. That they're this deep opening of the eye of the spirit, what we might call the eye of the heart, using Sufi language, which actually allows us to access something of the interior face of cosmos. We actually begin to understand that spirit is real. But it's kind of like the strawberry ice cream issue, right? If you've never had strawberry ice cream, well, then you can talk about it all you want, but you're going to think it's a fiction because you've never tasted it. Yuval Harari never tasted strawberry ice cream. So he's trying to understand through these vague hints what it means. You got to taste it, right? And that's why, for Aquinas, for example, his favorite verse, right, in the biblical text was always from Psalms, Ta'amu u'u ki tov Adonai, right? Taste and see that God is good. And what he meant was a quality of spirit that's real. Spirit's real. And spirit lives on the inside. And you can find spirit by accessing it from the inside. And then you fall away from spirit. And then there's a way back, and that way back requires practice and transformation. And when you find your way back, there's actually an end to unnecessary suffering, and you're filled, right, with a sense of aliveness, right, and purpose and direction and joy, right, and meaning. Life becomes self-evidently meaningful in every second. And you begin to be an expression and an incarnation, right, of what the Christians would call Christos, or the Jews would call tzedakah, chesed, right, goodness, right, compassion, right, activism. And this is where the Hebrew idea of tikkun olam, right, that I begin to incarnate a movement to heal and repair and transform reality as an expression of spirit. All of that for Harari is a fiction. So Harari doesn't actually understand that there's actually not just the eye of the senses, which is the measurable reality upon which modernity focused, which is unbelievably important. And of course, the entire scientific revolution is based on, in modernity, we stopped just classifying things, as Aristotle did, and we started measuring them. Kepler said, let's measure. And measurement was the beginning of modern science. And the scientific method yielded all of the goods, the dignities of modernity. But, right, as my friend Ken Wilber likes to say, it also yielded the disasters of modernity. The disasters were real. And the disasters meant that we accumulated technological power, right, and we accumulated material power through extraction models. We kept extracting. And we created financial systems which required perpetual growth. So we had an exponential growth curve that resulted from the scientific revolutions, which produced the Industrial Revolution, which took us from 500 million to 7.5 billion to this radical exponential growth curve. And then, oh my God, it's all about to fall off because the extraction model has nothing left to extract. Right? The gap between the haves and the have-nots kind of widens and widens and widens. And we're left with this world where we don't know where to go. Right? On so many levels, it's breaking down. So Harari says, well, all we have is, right? All we have is the tools of measurement. So for Harari, the only way you can respond to the gates of hell opening, right, is through data, right, through measurement, right, through technology, right? And so his view of the future is this techno-hacked, immortal human being who's so expensive that he or she's only available to a very small elite, and everyone else in his future dystopian vision very possibly becomes irrelevant. We have this Hunger Game world, right? But he doesn't see a way out because for him, the only reality that exists is an exterior, reductionist, materialistic, measured reality through the tools of the eye of the senses, the tools of classical exterior measurement. Now, beautiful tools, and science is wildly important,